Thanks for some time with us today. We're going to talk a little bit about mobile here. Just to introduce myself a little bit, for those of you who don't know, my name is Jason Loehr. I am the SVP for Strategy and Development here at Mad Pow. A couple of things on screen here is my email address and my Twitter handle. We've also got a couple of hashtags here to follow along in the conversation. Should be a fun hour. Shouldn't take us the full hour, but depending upon the number of questions, we'll try to get you out of here on time. Just a little bit about my background. Started off back in the early 90s, building the web of campingworld.com, their e-commerce catalog, focusing a lot on the recreation sector. Then jumped into the consulting world at Fredericks of Hollywood for a couple of years and helped them out as they got their web presence. Always a good time. Then spent several years at Humana, working in the healthcare sector, helping to build their digital team and their digital presence, which leads me to Mad Pow, where I've had some great experiences with a lot of our clients, especially as they've looked at mobile as a new solution or an extension of their existing solutions. It's something that we're starting to see more and more of, and we certainly appreciate your attendance here today to kind of continue the conversation with us. A little bit about why we are here. This is a stat from Forrester Research's recent study on the global business and channel strategy, looking at what are people doing when it comes to mobile. It's actually encouraging to see that folks are definitely embracing this space. Here we've got about 38% or so that say that they have had a strategy and they have one for at least a year or more. Others, about 40% or so in that early stage, working on things, getting things going. There's still about 20% or so that are still a little lost, or they haven't really defined what they want to do, but it's interesting to see that this is obviously a little bit dated, but it's continuing to happen. And the more conversations that I have with clients, with colleagues, others in the industry, it's a continuous conversation around what are we going to do when it comes to mobile. So as far as what to expect for today, we're going to set some context, take a look at the market. I think a lot of the folks on the call know that this mobile thing is going to be happening in a big way. So I don't want to spend too much time there, but at least do some level setting. Look at the strategy development itself, how we're going to manage ongoing success, and then open up for some questions. And I know that there's 100 million presentations out there on mobile strategy, and I certainly do appreciate you joining us today for mine. The one thing that I want to emphasize that I want to be talking about is my experiences both on the client side as well as on the partner side to go through, and I've always sat at that kind of crossroads between marketing and business and IT, and really trying to help understand and empower those on the business side. Those are the business leaders that are trying to build digital teams, build digital presence, maybe by chance are now the digital person and need some help, and those that have some experience that are doing things in the mobile world to bring some of the experiences that I've had, that we've had as a collective at Mad Pow, to bring some of those insights together and actually give you some tools to help move your strategy going forward. I'm really trying to focus more on the what's to try and help get those value, get the question going around what we're going to be doing. We'll touch on a little bit about the how on the execution side, but really they're going to play hand in hand going forward. So with that, let's jump on in. The idea is that we're going to turn the fire hose on for about 30 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up for questions to get feedback from the group and see where else we can help. So this, where we're at today, this is looking at the old Palm Pilot and the old Palm Trail, which was my favorite phone probably of all time. Love that little thing. Interesting to see as we move from more of an evolutionary stage where we had the Palm Pilot, had some interest with it, moved to the phone, and really kind of set the groundwork for the revolution that we're seeing today when it comes to the mobile world. And really, Apple's been at the center of that. The iPhone is really the market leader when it comes to that experience, and that's the one that's basically setting the tone for a lot of things to come. And they're definitely the early adopter as well as the trendsetter in a lot of ways. But the evolution will also continue to happen here, and new revolutions will come. It's a matter of making sure that, from a business standpoint, that we're at the right spot. So as far as the characteristics and context for when I say mobile, what do I mean? 3 areas come to mind. The most important is portable. I think that's probably the one that we all resonate with pretty well. The second is instant on, which is that idea that when you turn that phone, you hit that button, it is on instantly. There's no boot up, there's no loading. It is there instantly, and it provides that information to you and gives you that access within an instant. And then finally, the networked. This piece is important, especially with the inclusion of the cloud technologies and the ideas that things can be living on the internet and you can have access points to it via iPad, iPod, etc. that networked piece is very important. Some of the advanced characteristics for mobile that come to mind are the location, GPS, the device itself knows where you are at any time. The camera, the video, which definitely adds value to it. As you can Flickr now, there are more photos uploaded via phone, such as an iPhone or an Android device, than there are any other phones or any other cameras that are out there. So the phone itself is definitely taking over that space. The accelerometer, which is the component of technology that allows to know where the device is when it comes to tilt, motion, some of those fun apps where you can blow into the bottom of the iPhone and it will know and hear the sound and then be able to take it and move around and do some of the virtual activities, some of the, especially when it comes to the games, to be able to move the device around. And then the connectivity peripherals. This one's been important, especially recently in the healthcare world. What's on screen here is a shot of the Agamatrix solution that is the test strip reader at the bottom that allows you to plug into the bottom of the iPhone and add additional functionality to the experience. A very beautiful device, an amazing experience, and showing the extensibility of having the phone and the devices that can connect to it. Finally, the multi-thing operating system so that you can do more things together at the same time and have one application running alongside another. The primary areas of interaction, we've always got the SMS features, the text messaging. This is really kind of the baseline. It's a very important part of that overall mobile experience and the mobile strategy. The simplicity, the ubiquity, the readability. You're definitely more inclined to read a text message more so than you are other forms because it is right there and right in front of you. The mobile web, access to some features on the phone such as GPS, such as the ability to have the information indexed inside of Google and Bing and other search engines because it is an extension of that web experience, just in a mobile format using the mobile browser. The nice thing about the mobile web, you don't have to worry about iTunes, the Android store, those other things that are basically a gateway or a stakeholder in the process of getting your mobile application or experience out there. The mobile web, you don't have to worry about that. It's the open web. And then finally, mobile apps. This is definitely to have a much more in-depth experience with the device itself. So we've got the ability to do special things such as in-app purchases. You get the full features of the phone from the camera to the accelerometer to the GPS, all of that, all accessible via that app. 3 distinct areas, but all 3 definitely play a part of the conversation when it comes to your mobile strategy and where things fit. Additional areas of consideration. I've got a couple things here. You've got the PS Vita, which is the new device that's coming out from Sony. That's a mobile gaming device that has much more connectivity and extensibility to apps that's coming out this fall. The role of what happens inside the car and how the browser and the web can play a role in that, whether it be a connectivity on its own or through a Bluetooth device. Definitely something that we're starting to take more of a look at it when it comes to those experiences. Pandora is one that's had a lot of success here and continuing to have more success as far as having that experience inside of the dashboard. And then finally, the Chromebook here, which is, it's a view of the laptop, or the laptop itself as it's evolving to have a much more distinct set of features and functionality. It's definitely something you get more space, you get more to work with, you have that full keyboard in many cases. So where you may lose out because of the form factor of a phone, what are some of the things you can do? It's basically like an iPad with its built-in keyboard in the future. When it comes to the market, 2014, I'm saying probably even sooner than that, we're going to see the most common form of accessing internet will be from a mobile device. That's pretty significant when you consider how many computers are out there today and how people interact with the web. Having it from a mobile device definitely opens up that framework. And what's nice about this is that if you've sucked at the web in the past and it's been very difficult and you've had challenges when it comes to that overall desktop web experience, the mobile web and the mobile resources are really kind of a form of being able to kind of reboot some of those strategies and some of those approaches to say, let's get the mobile experience right, and let's let that lead the conversation. Google's been famous for this with their work a couple of years ago to promote the mobile first when it comes to the stuff that they were doing. So again, it's almost like a rebirth. It's the idea that you have the desktop experience, but if you can get the mobile right, and then help that to lead some of the desktop experiences, you're going to be in a good place. And the other trend that we see is that this year is really that tipping point. In the coming year, smartphones are going to outsell PCs. Right now, there's about 35% of folks that already have this. that already own a smartphone, and of those, about 25% do most of their browsing via their phone. This translates into several categories. When we talk about commerce, Amazon and eBay are already doing over $1 billion in sales when it comes to the mobile sales, so it's definitely something that's having a huge impact, and you see the projections here for it to reach $31 billion by 2016. Social media has been pretty much the fire on the overall experience. It's been a catalyst. It's been sending things over the top with 250 million active Facebook users via the mobile device. It's especially important when it comes to that consumer-to-consumer interaction. The challenge right now from a Facebook perspective is that the mobile experience, if I'm a brand, kind of sucks. It's not really the best that it could be. Again, it will become better, but it's something that we need to continue to monitor and watch as that evolves over time. And then the health sector. 70% of Americans have expressed interest in mHealth. Things from a barometer and the example earlier with having the devices be able to connect phones and be connected and track progress and use that as an extension of your overall health life cycle. It's a big deal. This picture is an interesting one because it kind of brings together, granted it's a little bit low fidelity, but it shows three areas that we as some of my folks and my colleagues at Mad Pow talk about a lot, which is the convergence of three areas. You've got the mobile device, which in this case is a BlackBerry phone. You've got the social component. For those of you that can't read the screen, he's basically saying, I just finished Gears of War, and in this case he's making a reference to Coltrane music in the credits is killing me, which we'll have to work on his culture as far as understanding jazz. But the idea is that you're connecting the mobile, there's a social component that's then combined with the gaming component. Now again, the picture's a little low fidelity, but it's this type of work that's really trying to really reinvent some of the categories, especially in healthcare, with folks like MIU Health and our friend Trapper that's doing a lot of work in that space. My experiences at Humana, who have a great deal of focus around that games for health, take that into the financial services sector and trying to bring more of a fun approach to the money management. And you can just go sector by sector and see where these three areas are definitely having a much larger factor. Yet a couple of the pieces into this, like cloud technology and the commerce conversation, and they continue to add to the overall view of how these three things are going to be the center of a lot of innovation and a lot of strategies in the future. The one thing I will say when it comes to the idea around apps, the reason that I want to bring that up is that games right now account for 47% of app minutes consumed, according to one of the online app companies, Flurry. So 47% of the app minutes that are being used right now are via games. Yes, I know I'm going to rehab for Angry Birds and cut the rope, and I know friends are as well. It's that type of having the time to be able to use those games and lead you into the things. The gaming piece and the entertainment piece is definitely something to watch. Mobile video consumption is up in a big way. 41% of peak hour traffic when it comes to the mobile web is happening when it comes to video. That's a big deal. Mobile advertising. What's interesting about this is that when you look at what's happening in the space itself, with Google announcing yesterday that they're going to acquire Motorola, the Google Plus that's happened recently, and more importantly, the role of games when it comes to Google Plus and the Chrome browser. Google is really kind of gearing around this because right now, from an advertising perspective, that's really that is their key thing. And if they can get that right as they translate that to mobile, that really could be a big thing to watch in the future. And I think that's something that I know I'm looking at very closely. But the role of the games, the social, and the mobile coming together with these devices, and in this case, from an advertising perspective, a whole new arena. Peripherals, biometrics, you saw the example earlier. Security and privacy continue to be a conversation that needs to be very important, especially with the financial services and healthcare sectors. Can the personal health information live on the device? Does it have to live separately? How do you access that? That whole piece is very important when it comes to those strategies and making those things come to life. Design UX is a competitive differentiator. As a Mad Power, this makes me very happy. I thank Apple for their work to really focus on that elegance in the design, but really knowing that there's an intent behind that the focus is on the user and the experience itself is very rich and engaging, and it's a differentiator. For those of you that own a Zune versus those that own an iPod, you'll understand the difference. Finally, location-aware interactions, the Foursquare, Facebook Places, the move to near-field communications. Actually, this morning I saw that the ComScore came out with their recent data that in June, 14 million people used a QR code, which is interesting because I used my first one not too long ago, and I know that that's something that I've worked on those strategies in many ways, but to see that practically happen in more ways. The other, along with that, was that they said that the profile of those that were using the QR codes were typically male, 18 to 24, and $100,000 or more income, which is obviously a pretty good consumer to have in the mix. NFC, not to get too nerd on you, but just to give you an idea as to what it is, near-field communications, it's definitely something that's on the radar. It's coming down the pipe. The idea that it's taking the evolution of QR codes into a more direct way. The nice thing is that the NFC communication, the actual technology is built into the phone, so you don't have to worry about downloading a reader, and it's basically built in. The other nice thing is that it's a two-way communication versus RFID, which is just a one-way street. That ability to go back and forth with the device and a reader of some sort is very important. From a marketing, from a business, from an innovation perspective, really NFC, there's three areas that, as I've read on it and seen examples of it in use and started to build strategies around this, the idea that it's sharing, you can have basically QR codes on steroids, the two-way communication, being able to have the conversation phone to phone or phone to device, and then the tap and pay when it comes to transactions is a whole new world that we're seeing in the future. It's going to take it to the next level. The Nexus S was probably the earliest adopter outside of Nokia itself, who was involved in the original creation of it. But that was the first mainstream one that we've seen recently. Met with some success, but again, not the great success that we see from the iPhone. iPhone's going to take this to the next level. There's been reports back and forth on if it's going to be in the iPhone. I doubt that it will. But if it does, that's a huge tipping point. All right, let's get into the strategy here. So I'm going to pause this with my soapbox for a second here, but when it comes to this whole concept of the mobile strategy, at the core of this, my thought is, okay, you have business objectives. You have things as to how you got to this point. You have a business strategy. You have what differentiates you, what you're about. Really, mobile is going to play both a leading and a supporting role in helping you work through those business strategies to meet those objectives. To me, it's about how mobile fits into not only your digital point of view, but also into your overall communication, engagement, business point of view, and what this is going to be in the future, because we know that it's going to be a leading factor in many cases, but it should support others that it does not necessarily touch directly. All right, off the soapbox, let's actually get into details here. So, strategy, what is it? So, a couple of definitions here. This is the dictionary Wikipedia version of it. As far as that long-term plan of action, elaborate systematic plan of action, I like what Porter has to say, things like unique selling positions, the few needs of many, the many needs of few, the broad needs of many, and delivering really the value proposition. Be prepared, because if it was Pee-wee's Playhouse, value is the key word in this conversation today. We know mobile's going to roll in it. Where does the value fit for the consumer? Finally, direct, which is probably my favorite definition, which is about strategy is knowing where you are today, where you want to take your organization, and how you're going to get there. So how are we going to get there? One of the first things that I focus on is, what are those big questions? What are the things that we're trying to answer here? From a brand, from a product, from the overall enterprise, what are the objectives we're trying to reach? Who is it that we're trying to have the conversation? Who are we targeting? And what are the measures of success? Now, granted, these may be measures that are at the macro level, but we know that there are some mobile ones that are going to play into that, as well as the mobile influence into those larger measures. But we got to ground ourselves. What are these big things that we're trying to focus on? To the consumer or the audience of any sort, if it's a B2B audience, what is the value that they're looking for? How do we tap into that? A couple things we'll go through on this. The approach itself, the channel, the platform, the device, starting to get into some of the details around what it is. I don't think you can ever go wrong by starting with the consumer. What are they looking for? What are they interested in? What are their characteristics? How can we start with them, get to the level of insights to bring us to the next level to find the solutions that are going to meet the success? So let's start with that. There's our old friend value. Now, to get to that value, a lot of things surrounding that, which is the process that we're going to go through over the next couple of minutes here. Let's start with the insight. But the part about the insight is that this is the nugget. This is the information that you're looking for. What are the business strategy and objectives, the primary research. One of the things that we focus on from a Mad Pow perspective is that, what is that insight, that user research, the user experience that we're trying to build the business intelligence around to get us to what those nuggets are, to find that insight. Looking at the flows, watching, understanding, and getting to the context that we need. The metrics and data points, traffic on your current website, what's happening with the on-site search, what are the folks telling you, what are your consumers telling you about the things that they need, what are the pain points, what are the problems that they need to tackle, how can we meet them. You do want to take a look at the competition. Are there things that you're kicking your butts on? Are there the things that they suck at as well, and how can you find a differentiator there in a good way? Finally, the day in the life, which is, I think that's probably a good place to start anybody. But walking through that consumer, and if you know enough about them and you can find those insights, that's where to focus. The story itself, the perspectives. This is really, the storytelling piece I can't emphasize more than anything. It's really about understanding and telling the story around how mobile can benefit the consumer and benefit their lives. A couple of perspectives that we look at are mobile is right here, right now. The idea that a consumer typically has their keys, their wallet, and that phone now as a part of their lives. Some countries, it's actually just the phone that has the wallet and the keys built into it. But it's that idea that those are the things they're closest with, and how can that play a role in the strategy that you're bringing to life. It fits in your pocket, so the size factor does play an important role, because it also plays a role in the design. You don't have that entire desktop screen to work with. A 27-inch screen, you're talking maybe a 3-inch by 4-inch screen in some cases. So you've got to understand how that plays a factor to give the value, but at the same time be very deliberate in how that information is delivered. It's a more intimate experience in a big way, especially when it comes to tablets. The idea of you're holding that website in your hand as if it's a magazine. It's definitely a more intimate way of interaction, and the device itself, when it comes to the phone, it's a different approach. We talked about the extension of it being, in some cases, a lead, in some cases, a support. There really is, the localization factor is huge here, because the GPS device knows where you're at. It can tell you things around you. That idea that I can set and basically have that presence of the device and the person, know where they're at, know what they need from around them, and that localization plays a big role when it comes to those strategies. And then finally, looking for the context. What's the situation? I think one of the best examples, and I've used this in many conversations when it comes to benchmarking, but is the old Nationwide app. It's the idea that they know the situation, the occasion, the environment. There's been a car accident. What are the things that are needed? What does that process look like? And how does the mobile device play a factor into that? I'm wishing that State Farm had an app for when a tree falls through your garage. I could certainly use one right now. But it's an idea that there are things that I need, and I can understand and walk through that process. The situation, the occasion play a big role, especially with the iPad. If you think about the living room, I think that's one of the next big kind of, competition, grounds when it comes to the iPad experiences interacting with your television. If the internet TV may not be what we think it's going to be, maybe the tablet is it. And HBO with the HBO Go app has definitely put a lot of focus around that. The living room will be a big role in the future. And then time spent with device. These stats were interesting. Found these through a Gartner survey that I saw recently around the time spent with the device. So with the phone, it's an average of 26 sessions a day at 1.5-minute intervals. The tablet, an average of 12 sessions a day at 7 minutes. What's interesting is that if you have a consumer who has both a phone and a tablet, that phone interaction actually drops down to about 19 sessions, and it's supplemented by the tablet then as alongside the phone itself. So, the idea that how people are using the device and how that phone may come into interaction, those opportunities to have that FaceTime and get information in front of them. Mobile strategy in action. As far as this is a couple years old, but it was an interview with one of Google's UX leads talking about how they approach mobile from a business perspective. And they broke it down into behavior groups. So there were 3 areas. There were those consumers that were repetitive now, so they had the same information over and over that they needed to get. Bored now, so they had time on their hands, and that how could mobile play a role in that? This is especially true when it comes to gaming. And then the urgent now, so they need to find some information specific fast. This information and content is not new. It's been referenced in a lot of mobile strategy discussions. To me, I think it's something that folks really can take a look at and apply back to your business. That may not be the 3 categories, but it's that idea that those real scenarios, at least at the high level, help start conversations and help to ground the conversation as you're starting to vet those strategies out. Who can go wrong with Google? I mean, ice cream sandwich is our next operating system for Android. It's a beautiful thing. All right, so when it comes to approach, this is where we start talking a little bit more about some of the technology and the specifics around the channel itself. So what do we do in SMS? What do we do in mobile web? What are we doing with apps? What are other categories that we need to add to the mix here when it comes to mobile? The platform itself, not a whole lot of time here, but it's the idea that you've got Apple, Android, Windows Phone 7, BlackBerry. Question I get a lot is Windows 7 going to be relevant? I definitely think it will be. From a developer community perspective, it's getting a lot of rave when it comes to the software development kit, how folks are embracing it. It just doesn't have enough momentum right now when it comes to devices, but that's going to change, as it will. You know, it's going to be in the coming years. Microsoft's too big. They have too many hands into things like Office, into the enterprise. They're going to be able to have, they're definitely going to be a factor, and in much more so than it comes to BlackBerry. BlackBerry has kind of fallen off it's gone off the deep end at this stage. I just have been playing around with the playbook, and it's really disappointing to see where that experience is and what it could have been, and really the opportunity that was lost with the experience of BlackBerry right now. And then finally the device, and the phone and the tablet. Apple basically built the category when it comes to tablets, at least to what we see today. Again, there hasn't really been a good competitor to that space, but that will change over time as well as more folks come online and the features and the experience itself change. We're going to take 30 seconds and we're going to talk about technology. So again, I don't want to get too nerd on you, but really the important thing here is that what I like to call is mall walking, then running. If we want to walk, we want to walk a little bit faster than if we're just walking in the street, because the technology itself is definitely evolving. So we need to make sure that as those technologies come online, that we are taking advantage of them and understanding where to run when the opportunity is right. We can't let technology dictate or weigh down that experience. It really should empower, and that's really where the focus comes. I really think that it's very important to have those subject matter experts on staff. It's really key when it comes to vetting and making sure that folks that things are happening in a good way, especially as partners are involved. Third parties, you want to make sure that you have at least that person on staff that knows what they're talking about, can understand how the technology impacts the existing enterprise technology, where it works, where it won't, so that you have that person to lean on when it comes to those technical conversations. There are definitely vendors out there that will tell you that they can develop in their platform and they can then deploy it to Android, deploy it to iPhone, and deploy it to anything else. Again, ask for referrals, do the homework, get those technology folks, the IT teams involved immediately, making sure that things are going to play out the way that they are. From a user experience perspective, there are definitely nuances. We've had a lot of experience at Mad Pow when it comes to working with folks that have an iPhone app, and how can we make this an Android app, or an Android app, how can we make it Windows Phone 7 or whatever. And it's not just about porting it over. It's about understanding the nuances of the device itself, what's happening on the hardware versus an iPhone versus an Android, making sure that things happen, because it isn't just a straight port. There are definitely questions that need to happen both on the UX side as well as the technology side. But especially with technology, get the IT folks in from the beginning. And then finally, the screen scraping option. It's an option. I don't know that it's the best option, but it is one that's out there. On that point, when we talk about this, my focus is that we're not about mobilizing the website. We're creating a mobile experience that's really going to be for the users with them in mind to provide value to them, so that that experience itself maximizes the most out of mobile and isn't just a straight port. There's no value in that. One of the best examples I've seen recently is Tesco here. One of their subsidiaries was moving into Korea. Didn't have as much reach when it came to the square footage in Korea to get the name out. Strategy-wise, one of the things that they did was go into the subways. They built these screens that actually look like the inside of a supermarket, and each of the little areas has a QR code on it. So as folks are waiting for the trains to come through, they can use those QR codes, snap them, go down what they need, order what they need, and it's actually delivered to their home later that evening. very innovative approach to solve some business issues when it comes to getting the reach, getting the impressions, getting the visibility, but then supplementing it with a very beautiful experience that's seamless, that makes it very valuable for the user, and at the end of the day, solve some of those business challenges. Brilliant stuff. We've talked about the Nationwide app. Again, great experience. When it comes to the mobile web, I continue to benchmark Google and see what they're doing, especially with the recent launch of Plus. Their mobile web experience today is very, very nice. It's an extension of the web. It actually doesn't degrade. It actually takes advantage of certain features and does so in a very nice way. Another good one to continue to monitor. And then, SMS-wise, I've seen a lot of them out there. One of the ones that I've worked with the team back at Humana on was the whole concept of sending in the text phrase for balance and getting the HSA balance back, which is a health savings account, that information sent right back to you. Seamless, instantaneous, very valuable when you think about at that point of sale, at the doctor's office, you're checking out, how much do I have in my account? Boom, sent that information, and it's back instantaneous. Brilliant approach. Can happen in many other ways. It's financial services. It's in a similar situation when it comes to checking account balances. But again, it's understanding what the consumer needs at that point, at that moment of truth, and getting information to them. A couple things to avoid when it comes to the approach here. The old bright, shiny object, hey, we need an app, which is one of our favorites. But, folks are, especially at the senior level, they're coming in, they're saying, hey, so-and-so is doing this. We've got to have an app. And it comes down to, okay, an app may be good, but what else are we doing? It's not just one. It's integrating it into the overall conversation around digital. It's how different pieces and social play into it. So, yes, it can start somewhere to gain some ground and to get, kind of cut your teeth on the experience, but it's also about having a larger conversation on how those things fit together. This whole concept of, if you upload an app to the App Store, no one downloads it, did you ever create it? There's a lot behind it, and it's not just one of those, if you put it up there, people will come. The old competitor has X, so we need X. One of the others is the general users versus your users. So it's the idea that, yes, the trend may be that that iOS, iPhone users are this percentage of the overall population, but what does that mean for you? Make sure you translate that back to your users, to what your consumers are doing, to make sure that that's valid, because, yes, that may be the overall trend, but what does that mean for your people specifically? Design for the feature versus the solution, again, you've got to have that holistic view. You've got to elevate the conversation in many ways. And then finally, the one that's the classic is focusing on one channel and not understanding of their impacts. Kind of touched on this earlier, but it's the idea that mobile should play both with, and in some cases lead, the digital side, the offline side. It's a huge factor, but how does that fit in the overall picture? So how are we going to bring this to life? Probably one of the most important things are, what are the priorities for the enterprise? What are the priorities for the project, for the brand? Is it engagement? Is it revenue generation? Is it brand awareness and brand visibility? Is it new business, so actually being able to take the phone and create a new business out of it? Is it a product line extension? What are the priorities and how does mobile play into that? Because again, those priorities can help dictate what happens where. For reference, this is from Forrester's recent, the Global Business and Channel Strategy. This is what, according to Forrester, what people are looking at. So in this case, customer engagement is a big one, customer satisfaction, loyalty. As apps and the opportunities for apps in particular to be a revenue generator, not really there right now, at least at the enterprise level. I think when you talk about games and others, there's definitely opportunities there. But again, when you talk about that 99-cent, those smaller increments, and the opportunity for in-app purchases, there are definitely new revenues out there, but it's a matter of what the focus is and how the market itself will evolve into that over time. Brand awareness is on here as well, lower than some of the others, but again, this is a point of view from what's happening right now today. Gap analysis. For those that already have experiences and have that work in place, great. What does it look like today? What is the lay of the land when it comes to mobile? But more importantly, when we get back to that Drucker definition, where do we want to be? And in this case, 6, 12, 18, Probably 18 is pretty long. 2 years is, that's an eternity in this space. How can we look at this and really be realistic around what we're doing with the idea that things don't always move the fastest as we want when it comes to working with several partners internally and externally, but understanding where can we take ground and how can we make that experience that we may not have as ideal today, make it different in the future. The big thing here is, back into the old quotes around Sun Tzu, it's the idea that really the key to success is not making the mistakes, and that flawless execution is very important, and understanding nuances to where one of the examples I've seen is that you may have an email that gets into someone's phone, and when they click on the link, it actually immediately reroutes someone to the mobile experience instead of the actual URL. Again, minutiae example, but it's the idea of making sure that you're doing things right today so that you can set things up for better in the future. And then finally, the roadmap. Taking those priorities. Is it revenue generation? Is it brand awareness? How do those map up against the channels that we're involved with and the audiences that we're interacting with? This gives you just a brief snapshot of an example of a roadmap, and I've actually uploaded a sample roadmap that I'll show you here in a second. That's something that you can use, add to, update, make your own. But it's the idea. These are some questions and some areas of focus when it comes to building out that roadmap to look more long term, because that's really where the execution comes into play. What are we focused on, and how are we making that happen? And then finally, the ongoing review. What's the internal state look like? How are we leveling ourselves at the product level? Rolling that up at the initiative level, and then focusing on the enterprise. Where is it leading? Where is it supporting? Where else do we need more mobile, and where are the opportunities that we're trying to take advantage of? Likewise, what does the external point of view look like? What are the trends on user experience? You're starting to see things now to where folks are taking more of a focus on app-type experiences and bringing it into the mobile web. What are the things that are happening today? What are the trends that we're looking at? Advances in technology in particular, because that's really one of the areas that grows itself in a much faster way. The continued convergence of mobile, social gaming, and what else? And the idea that you may have game-type methodologies and things like suggestive selling in a mobile experience that you have the ability to then socially comment on. What else? What else is coming into the mix? So the entertainment factor, the setting of the living room. What are those experiences, and how can you look at that continued convergence and add and make your own? Because it's one of the beauties of the strategies around, people didn't know that they needed an iPod until they used it, and then once they used it, they realized, I can't live without this. So what is that next thing that you're focusing on that is something that someone didn't know about that they needed, but they can't live without now? That ongoing review, again, how does that roadmap look? What are we doing with the follow-ups? So we've finished a project, and especially in the case where Agile is being used to do the implementation, how are we getting the information and insights routed up to those leaders when it comes to understanding what's next? Where are we focused on the next 6 weeks, the next 6 months? How is that change management taking place? Because the information is going to be coming fast and furious. And how are we doing this both on the implementation side as well as the strategic side to make sure that we're lined up properly? The old scorecard. Scorecards are always fun. You want to be able to get some measures out there and really focus on what's happening both qualitatively and quantitatively, and get those numbers out in front of stakeholders, in front of folks who can become advocates in your development, in your work. Understanding that there are social components of it, there are measures that we can see that are very tangible when it comes to traffic, downloads, etc. How can those translate against what we're seeing on the desktop web? Understanding how this fits from both exclusively mobile and then mobile in the overall grand scheme of things, so that you can help to compare and contrast those for future work. And then finally, the spot checks for accessibility and usability. As soon as you launch that app, as soon as that thing goes live, there becomes the whole management of it, because as operating systems change and evolve, does it still work? Are you doing the right innovations to make it work and take advantage of technology? And along the while, making sure that it is a good user experience, that it is accessible, and that you're focusing on that as a key tenet for your success. The bottom line is that this is our circle. This is our circle of life. But really, it's about understanding that each of these pieces fit into each other. Again, we kind of touched on this at the high level, but it's the idea that we're trying to get the feedback over to the consumers, or at least the stakeholders in this case, to make the consumer value and the consumer experience even better. Finally, We're not necessarily saying that's a question of whether or not to do mobile, but rather how well we do it. Again, this is actually it's a new era. Excuse me. It's the idea that, okay, so if we sucked at web in the past, how can we make mobile even better and learn from those mistakes to make this a key differentiation for us? All right, QR code time. So this is the last slide here that I have. It's the formal part of the conversation. I actually created this little Google site here, and I'll show you here real quick what it looks like. But this is all the information, so you can actually go and download the document. I've got the sample roadmap in here. I've got some details in here around the presentation itself, the research, a lot of things that I use to put this together, links, some links that I use when it comes to the continuing look at innovation and insights. If you find cool stuff, shoot me a note and I'll add it up here. And then there's a couple of goodies. That's right, that original Treo ringtone, I found it when I was doing the research for this, and by all means, that's something that you can share with everyone. So with that, I will switch over to the other screen here and see if I can't get some questions here. Let's see here. Let's see. There is a question here around, first one I see here, what does IVR speech interfaces fit in the mobile strategy picture? Why is it often such a separate? So basically, it's where does IVR and speech come into play when it comes to the mobile strategy? You know, I haven't spent a whole lot of time with the IVR factor. When it comes to those trees, I think consumers are a bit polarized by it. They either really like them or really don't. But I think that in the future, you're going to see the devices themselves, the phones, hopefully being able to interact better with those type of experiences. Again, I don't think we see that in place today. But I think as we look long term, it is that idea that you are on a phone, so there is the ability to take advantage and call a number and be able to interact with someone. But maybe it's about being able to set you up prior to getting into that IVR tree, that the phone or the device itself can be better connected to it. Probably more so in the app space, or maybe even from a SMS text messaging perspective. But I think that it's probably, hopefully, going to become more integrated, because really, as call center technology is advanced, I cannot see this not being right alongside of it at the same time. I'm going to jump back over here to see other questions on here. One from email talking about, you know, is Microsoft still going to be relevant? Again, Microsoft, they're definitely going to be relevant. I think that they're definitely going to be a factor. Right now, they don't have the number of devices, and the number of devices really is the key thing. That's what's making Android so interesting, because especially as Google has now purchased Motorola, and if I'm HTC or Samsung, I'm probably going, you know, the press release said that they're okay with this and that they've embraced it. But again, looking long term, what does this mean for the big picture? Because I think that while Microsoft doesn't have the place today, they can quickly get there because they have the money. We've already seen that when it comes to having the role of being able to do more and pay folks more for investing in Windows Mobile. So I think that they're definitely going to be a big factor. Another question here on recommendations on how to establish governance of the mobile user experience without limiting innovation of the organization. The word governance, it brings back memories. You know, I think that if you're really focusing, and those organizations that really have an interest in user experience and understand it are going to get it done sooner than others. But when it comes to information sharing and being able to at least have some checks and balances in place, to have that group that's kind of overseeing the overall user experience. Again, some folks have it, others don't, but that focus on being able to share the information and see that point of view from both the desktop world, the mobile world, how the social components play into that, how the offline components play into that. You know, as much as I hate meetings and as much as I just, you know, can appreciate all of the roles that committees play, that's really one of the best ways to do it. You know, it's the idea of coming and being able to set the context up front that it's about information sharing and knowledge transfer, and being able to help folks understand that, these are my experiences and I can transfer them over to you and gather insights from that. Technology is playing a bigger factor in that when it comes to some of the social tools that are being used in the businesses today. So I think it's about establishing repositories so that you can have and share screens and share experiences that you're working with, and at the same time find those folks, especially at the senior leadership level, that can have the point of view of the business areas and mix that in with the user experience folks, those folks that have the user-centered design, some of the human factors knowledge, the understanding of how those interfaces need to come to life, and being a part of that, because really, as you're looking a little bit further down the road, whereas today a lot of folks are worried about when it comes to brand or some of the visual representation as to who they are, they're really focusing more on the offline space and not paying as much attention to the digital world. And those digital experiences, because they are more two-way streets, because they are more interactive, and because they, in some cases don't know enough about them, they could kind of go down their own paths. So having that buy-in at the senior leadership level is going to be very critical. It's not the easiest, but I think that there are definitely enough examples out there today to show where organizations are doing that, and bringing that user experience focus to the head will then make life much easier when it comes to the mobile and other areas. The one thing that's kind of, you hate to lead with it, but in our world, for those of the leaders that are on this call here today, everybody, especially the senior leaders, they all have the same mobile phones, they use the same websites, and they're always the experts, and that's the information that we love to get, the feedback that we love to get, because that shows that there's interest. That's also the point in time where you can show that, hey, if you like X website, did you know about this different website that is a better experience, and showing that and showing why it's better. Those case studies always go a long way, especially with senior leaders and the experiences that I've had, and how that may influence budget discussions, which is probably a discussion over bourbon more so than it is here. But it's understanding that that's where the buy-in can take place, and understanding that user experience and then information knowledge and sharing can be led by the senior leaders, but having the stewards be those folks that are focused on UX and bringing that into the mix. I've had a lot of experience in those governance models. I think that the worst thing that you can do from our experience, my experiences in particular, is that as soon as you put the word governance around it, it can add some negative connotations, but it's very critical when it comes to understanding that folks need to be able to play and have areas to do so, especially internally, but understanding that there should be process and realization before that gets put into the masses and ready for prime time, if you will. Great question. All right, looks like we've got one more here. What about the online, the iPad-specific applications? I guess this is kind of a reference to the to the old. My favorite example of I want to say that's the greatest success. Probably one of the biggest failures of recent is the Daily. Talking about those that are being iPad-only publications. I think that there was a lot of fervor behind it. I think that Murdoch's probably got his own problems to deal with now that the Daily is probably just a fleeting glimpse. But I think that the iPad and having that as a lead when it comes to some of the revenue generation, it's definitely there. I mean, especially as you look at the extension of that television experience, it's definitely something to watch. I just was thinking the other night whenever, so my wife is watching and I'm watching with her the No Reservations with Anthony Bourdain. And so if you think about that, what the future was going to be for the interactive television, the idea that I'm in there and I can click on this on the screen or whatever, and I can see what he's wearing and I can see the drinks that he's making. But how do you extend that experience to the iPad? Because the iPad is now a permanent part of the living room, at least at our household. What is some of the what does that play in when it comes to how we can extend that experience on the iPad into that living room and really make an extension, in this case, of the television, that viewing experience? I think that's something that I'm starting to study more, and something that I think other folks are starting to gravitate more toward. But that iPad is going to revolutionize the living room in other ways that it already hasn't. Vizio, their new televisions, they're actually coming out with their own iPad tablet version And that tablet actually is going to have the infrared technology built into it to be able to control your actual television, your Vizio branded television. So I think that we're going to see more of that come into play, to where the iPad can play a leading factor and potentially even a revenue generator around that television and that entertainment experience in the living room. Plus, it's much less clunky to have a tablet in there than having the whole computer set up, which is what we've seen in some cases in the past. And I'll put together the notes on the Q&As and put those into the Google site as well. I don't see any other questions coming through. Courtney, if you've got any, you can forward them my way. But if not, I can't thank you guys enough for taking the time to hang out with me. Really appreciate your feedback following this. This is definitely something to where if there's more I can add or additional value I can bring, I'm all for it. I want to help you out in any way I can. Thanks, and I hope to see you around at one of the upcoming conferences, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.